What's up, guys? It's Ethan here, and on this upcoming Wednesday, I'll be releasing an interview that I did with PJ Dixon. If you don't know who PJ is, he's an amazing guy. He's a professional speaker, and he's accomplished so much, even though he has certain limitations, but he hasn't let any of his limitations stop him. So, PJ sent me one of his speeches that he did just this last year, so I hope you guys enjoy this speech and can learn a little bit about PJ and get some inspiration from his motivational speech, so stay tuned.
What's up, Thrive Tribe? Yeah! I freaking love you guys. Woo! My little heart's going pitter patter, pitter patter. I don't know if you all know this or not, but I'm kind of disabled, which means that I sometimes have to do things a little bit different. Like, when I go skydiving, it's a lot like being kidnapped. I'm strapped to the front of a big guy, clearly bigger than I am. And as he walks around, my arms and legs are flopping around all over the place. Ladies, it's super sexy. So as we get in the plane, whether I want to get out or not, remember that whole kidnap thing? I don't have a choice. So I don't like to live my life like everybody else, because I'm not like everybody else, and neither are you. And it's really important for us to realize who we are as people. And sometimes that means we have to conquer our fears. And sometimes conquering your fears is obviously the scariest thing that you'll ever do, right? Like, let's give a hand for Sonia. So my jump instructor says this. He says, all right, on 3, we're going to jump, right? So he swings our legs out. Actually, first what happens was he decides that it's time to jump, and he leans over, opens up the door. And as he opens up the door, it flies open and goes clang, 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 clang on the back of the plane. And he leans over to lock the door down. And when he leans over, this is what happens with my head. I'm out the plane. If I was braver, I would have wet my pants. So then he puts my legs out and he goes, okay, on 3, and my legs are flopping in the wind. And he goes, on 3, 1, 2, what about 3? So he says, as we're flying at 120 miles an hour towards the ground, he goes, put your arms out to the side. I say, have you seen my chicken wings? They'll break off at 120 miles an hour. Clearly, I'm the brains of this matter. Which is a little bit dangerous because remember, I'm kidnapped. So I decide that I'm going to put my hands in front of myself because I figured at 120 miles an hour, I don't want these things coming off because we're never going to find them, like a needle in a haystack. So most people think you're going to cross your arms like this in front of you, right? Which seems like a pretty darn good idea, except that I don't have that kind of muscle. So I, strapped to the front of this guy, make a different decision. I'm going to put my arms here. Some of you see where this is going already, huh? I don't know if you know this or not, because you all seem a little bit stronger than I am, but hands that have no forearm strength flop pretty fast at 120 miles an hour. So skydiving usually causes this amazing experience in the heart, right? The adrenaline gets dumped, the endorphins are super excited, this is wonderful. Mine actually had a soundtrack. This is what it sounded like. Ah! He thought I was having a great time. I was pretty sure I was never going to make babies. So another time, a friend of mine, 2 friends of mine, again, I'm not like other people. Have anybody been to the Grand Canyon? Has anybody been to the Grand Canyon? Woo woo! Yeah, it's one of my favorite places, right? So when I go to the Grand Canyon, I'm not like other people. Where you go? Well, that's a big old hole. I look in and I'm just moved because it's one of the biggest things I've ever seen in my life, aside from the ocean and the love of a mother. And as I stand there at the edge of the Grand Canyon looking in, I feel incredibly small. And when I feel small, I feel humble. And when I feel humble, personally, I feel close to God. And when I feel close to God, I feel loved. I feel like I'm part of everything. So we climb on my friend's back, and we climb up and over the rail and down into the Grand Canyon, right? So all that idea of feeling reverent and all that goes right out the window because I'm a boy, and boys do crazy things. We climb up and over the rail and down into the Grand Canyon. And my two best friends, Jeff and Tim, they literally, this is what happens. Jeff is holding me by my wrists. Think about my scrawny little arms sticking up above me. If I could lift them, I would, right? This is me lifting them. Yeah, can you imagine me in the romance? What's up, baby? Sorry. So now you're all picturing my first date. Come on. Y'all get your heads back. So my friend Jeff is holding me by my wrists in the Grand Canyon, and he squats as low as he can, and he lowers me over the edge of the Grand Canyon, literally over the edge. My friend Tim, 2.5 to 3 feet below me, standing on a 14-inch ledge, about 25-degree incline, kicked most of the gravel off. And Jeff goes, okay, Tim, on 3, I'm going to drop PJ. 1. I know, these are my friends. 1, 2, 3. And Tim catches me. Had Tim not caught me, I would have fallen a half a mile before I hit the ground. Unless I hit the ledge that Tim was standing on and took Tim with me, right? And so Tim grabs me and he pulls me up against his chest after he catches me. Because Tim is a wonderful man. He's just a lover at his core. And he pulls me up against his chest, and we squeeze between two rocks, and we walk out onto this cliff. A cliff that most human beings have, never walked out on, ever. Most human beings, and certainly, I would imagine, no disabled person. And he walks me out, and we get right to the edge, and Tim slips and falls on his butt and his back. And he slides right to the edge, and his feet and ankles go over the edge, while I'm cradled in his chest. That's living! That's the best! That's super freaking cool! Because in that moment when you feel like you're going to lose everything, you want everything. You appreciate everything. And appreciation is the number one most important thing if you're ever going to change the direction of your life. Now, I'm going to tell you that there's a number one quality for stopping: not loving yourself. And why would I choose this at an event filled with 1,000 entrepreneurs, amazing, beautiful people? Because I have found the same story at the previous 2 Thrives and every other convention that I've been to. There's amazing, beautiful people out there who want to do remarkable work for the rest of the world. But when it comes time to it, they don't love themselves. They don't like themselves. I can't lift my arms, but I love myself. But I didn't always, right? And I live this way. I told Sonia I was going to say this, that I changed my topic. I didn't change my topic, I changed what I was going to speak, because all of the speakers before me, including Sonia, led me to say, I haven't been living authentic. I got tired of telling my story. I literally have been speaking since I was 7 years old, which was super cool, but I got tired of telling my story. And when I got tired of telling my story, I wanted to teach, I wanted to share, I wanted to be super smart, and I wanted to talk about NLP and neurolinguistic programming, same thing, right? And heart math and like love and all this cool stuff, and I wanted to do that. But I keep getting told by some of my friends, dude, you got to tell your story. You got to tell your story. You got to tell your story. I was like, what story? And they're like, you're freaking disabled. I'm like, I am? I don't even know that. It's freaking true. My shoes are so clean you could eat off the bottom of them. I like this, the secondary crowd back there like, I get it. What's funny is they were all sitting together. I love love. And I love because that's just who I am, and I've always been that way. But I had a traumatic experience that happened when I was 9. And I'm not going to spend a ton of time on it, but I want you to know that I witnessed some sexual assault while I was in a pool therapy, and I couldn't do anything because I was 9 years old, and I was left by the therapist to tend to myself, and I could barely keep my head above water. I was practically drowning. And as I was practically drowning, I was also watching this woman be assaulted. Not profound like most of you are probably thinking, but in a way that she was uncomfortable, and I couldn't get to her. I couldn't do anything. It was everything I could do to just be able to catch a freaking breath. And the guy threatened me when he took me out of the pool eventually and told me not to tell. And when I got home, I told two of my little friends, and when I told my 2 little friends, they promptly told their mom and dad, as they should have. And when they told their mom and dad, as soon as they told their mom and dad told my mom and dad, which they should have, because I was too scared to tell them. And then my dad yelled at me for 5 minutes. And I thought, this is like 39 years ago, right? And the other day, and I'm telling you this because I chose to come out and be authentic. I chose to come out and be raw. I came to tell you my truth. And just a couple of weeks ago, I was like, okay, why does this keep coming up? It doesn't bother me. My dad yelled at me for like 5 minutes when I was a kid, but why does this keep coming up? And so I started to look into it, and I started to journal, and all of a sudden I was like, well, why was Dad yelling? And I was like, oh, I forgot about that situation. And then I started to journal about that, and then journaled about what my dad was doing, and I realized that those 5 minutes that I thought meant nothing literally reshaped my thinking and changed exactly who I was from that point forward and made me the man that I became. Not just that. I mean, I have an amazing mom, but that situation was also part of it, because in that moment, I chose that there would never be another time when another woman would ever feel unsafe in my presence. I teach women's self-defense classes. I held a 10th degree black belt in a combat martial art. I can't lift my arms, so don't get too close because I'll kung fu you. Probably with my head. Oh, I just realized what that probably looks like. I'm real short and I see that zippers are undone all the time, and I just went. Don't get any ideas, sir. Because I did use teeth. Oh, the jokes are getting bad. I'm so sorry. Cole and Sonia are like, why did we let that guy talk? Why? Mrs. Hatter's like, I'm going to need a therapist. But in that moment, my brain rewired. And this is really relevant and important, because if you don't realize that you have probably rewired your brain, and that's why you're not where you want to be. There's something that happened, and it doesn't have to be traumatic. Somebody might have said something to you. Somebody might have looked at you wrong. Somebody might have made fun of you. It could have been as simple as your cousin got told she had pretty hair, and they didn't say anything to you. And you thought, well, don't I have pretty hair? Like, what about me? Oh, you have beautiful skin. Hi, what about me? So it doesn't matter what happened. I mean, it does. But what matters is when you start to take responsibility and control for your own self, right? Because you can't help anybody unless you become strong. And you don't have to become physically strong, but can you become intelligent? Can you become strong emotionally? Can you have love in a way that says, I will never let anybody get hurt or be forgotten? One of the most important things for me is I love to love, and I love to do that by listening to people who don't feel like they're connected to anybody else. That's really important, because I don't want anybody to be ever left behind. And I love that. It allows me to feel significant. It allows me to feel like I'm valuable, like I matter. And I grew up on stage, and I grew up with really no trauma and drama in my life. I have a good life. But I still didn't like myself because I compared myself. And when I compared myself to other people, I realized that I'm not very strong. I'm not very tall. Like, all the other guys have the girls, and like I'm super duper nice, like what's going on, and why can't I, like, and all of this. And so I knew that I was born for a reason, to benefit, my disabilities to benefit other people, and I'm so okay with that. But when I was a kid, I wasn't okay that I didn't also have the same thing that you have. And so I overcompensated, and I love the man that I became, because I love the kindness, I love the gentleness and the genuineness. And then, yet I still didn't like myself. I like who I am now, but in that moment I didn't like myself. And so I'm going to tell you something that I've only started telling people recently. So I hope that you don't have to believe me, but it's my truth. When I moved to Arizona 20 years ago, I moved there to study with a spiritual teacher. And she said, PJ, when you go home tonight, I want you to pray. And when you pray tonight, I want you to say, hey, God, what do you want me to do with my life? And I was like, all right, cool, I can do that. And she said, and then I want you to become quiet and listen. And so I went home and I said, okay, God, I've just moved to Arizona. I just moved to Tucson. I believe that I'm supposed to be here for a reason. Why am I here? Tell me what you want me to do. And a pillar of golden light came out of the ceiling, or through the ceiling, hit me in the top of the head and filled up my entire being. And I heard one word, love. And I knew in that moment it didn't matter what I did, as long as I loved people and I loved while I was doing it. So then, that was in October. In April the following year, I was walking down the street. I was going to martial arts class. And as I was walking, I was walking, I'm going to say this direction. I don't know which direction I'm facing, but it was that way, right? It was forward. So I guess that's forward for me. So I'm walking, and there's 3 lanes of traffic coming this way, and I see a black SUV coming out of a restaurant on my left side. And I look at the oncoming traffic, and I think there's no possible way this guy's coming out. So I run out in front of him, right? And he guns it. He steps on the gas. And as he steps on the gas, I literally have time to look, and he's looking to his left. He doesn't see me at all. He hits me with the intention of jumping out into traffic where there's no space. And as he hits me, he throws me through the air in front of 3 lanes of traffic. And I hear my wheelchair crumpling underneath his vehicle, literally. And I have time enough to pray, God, whatever happens, please don't let him roll over my pelvis. I tuck and roll like I've learned in martial arts as best as my little crazy back can do. I tuck and roll, and the front driver's side wheel comes to rest, leaning against my pelvis. Had he rolled 2 more inches, he would have crushed me. And had that happened, I never would have walked again. Part of me was like, am I going to have to say, wait a minute, you'll get it? I thought it was painfully obvious I'm disabled. Oh, no, this is just a ploy to get the ladies, Michael O'Neill says. And that might be true. So I get knocked out into 3 lanes of traffic. His SUV comes to rest leaning against my pelvis. Not a single car accident. No car hits me, no car hits another car. And there happened to be an EMT, an emergency medical team, inside of the restaurant, and they witnessed what happened. They came running out, and they're like, stop moving, stop moving. I'm like, it hurts a lot. I'm writhing in pain. And the guy's like, can you move your toes? And I stopped writhing in pain, and I said, no, but I couldn't move them before I got hit. I don't think he saw the wheelchair. I don't know what he thought, why I was so emaciated. My mom didn't feed me, apparently. Wish you guys could live in my world. Not like short and hairy, I mean, just, you know, from my brain. I forget where I was. Oh, so the EMT team comes out, right? And they pick me up, and forgive me, I don't know which one I'm looking at. Oh, okay, cool, I know now, the time. So the EMT team picks me up, and they run me across the street to the hospital. I was not intended to die that day. I was intended to learn something because I spent the next 4 months in physical therapy. And on the very last day of physical therapy, and I was in excruciating pain. I couldn't sit up, which is hard for a dude who can't walk. I couldn't lay down comfortably. I couldn't roll over. I couldn't feed myself because I couldn't find a comfortable position. I couldn't sit in the shower because the bottom of the shower was hard and it hurt. Everything in me hurt. I already couldn't walk. I already couldn't lift my arms. I already couldn't hug a woman or spin her around. And now I was in excruciating pain. I couldn't feed myself. I couldn't even roll over. I couldn't sit in my own wheelchair. Everything that I had was being stolen from me. The very last day, and I don't quit. I don't know how. I was supposed to die at 7, just like this lady that we're helping. She was supposed to go at 5. They were expected to take me, right? I was supposed to die at 7. I've lived 39 years longer than I was supposed to. Stick with me for just 2 more minutes. So on that last day, my physical therapist says this to me. He says, PJ, I've looked at everything. I've looked at every medical journal. I've looked at my old texts. I've talked to my old professors and teachers. I've talked to all my mentors. I don't know what's wrong. He's like, I'm sorry. You're just going to have to figure out a way to live with the pain or find another therapist. He said, there is one possibility that one of my mentors said it could be. And he said, you might have popped your pubic bone out of place when you hit the concrete. And I was like, you think? Like, we're 4 months in. I wish we could have done this in the beginning. And so he's like, but I'm going to have to palpate to see. So he pushes down on the pubic bone, and he goes, that's what it is. Your right pelvic bone is popped out of place. And he's like, this is going to hurt. And I was like, okay. So I'm laying sideways on this hospital bed or whatever it is, right? And he's like, you ready? And I was like, yep. And he goes, pop. And I was like, ah! With everything in me, I wanted to get up and walk. And then after I got through the pain, and this is the important part, I really want you to get, after I got through the pain, after I stepped up and said, you know what, it's going to freaking hurt, and I'm scared, but I'm willing to do it. Because if I don't do it now, I live with the pain and the suffering for the rest of my life because the decision I made, not somebody else. Somebody tried to help me, and I wouldn't have accepted it if I'd made a different decision. I said, let's do it. Ah! And then all of a sudden, the pain was gone. It was literally gone that quick. And tears came to my eyes, and I felt appreciation for a life that I had not appreciated. And for 28 years, I had not appreciated my life, aside from being a child, right? Because I took for granted the fact that I wasn't in pain. I took for granted the fact that I could move my body. But the moment everything was stolen from me, immediately when it was given back, I was overwhelmed with appreciation. And this is when I learned to really, truly love and realize that that pillar of golden light wasn't about me learning to love and teach other people how to, or teaching other people to love, or loving other people. Let me trip over my own tongue. But it was about learning to love myself so that I could help other people learn to love themselves. And so what I realized is that the first step in actually learning to love is letting go. When you let go of the pain and the suffering that could be in your head or in your body, there's an immediate liberation. And then there's a sense of sensual awareness. And I don't mean sexual awareness. I mean just an awareness of your senses and the fact that, wow, I'm sitting and it doesn't hurt. Wow, I can move and it doesn't hurt. Wow, this tastes amazing. This feels great. No, I want to do it myself. I can physically do it. Like excited for life again because I could actually do something. And I was overwhelmed with appreciation, which is step number 3. Number 1, let go of the pain. Number 2, suffering and the lies and the false beliefs. Number 2, very simply, start to appreciate, start to be aware of what your surroundings are bringing you. Number 3, appreciate it. And when appreciation fills you so much, it starts to spill out of you. It becomes gratitude. When gratitude gets so full inside of you, it turns into love. And when you love, you have the ability to let go at new and profound levels. And you're constantly in a state of enlightenment. And you're constantly in a state of appreciation. And you're constantly in a state of love. Because you're constantly letting go. You're constantly experiencing and tasting and smelling. You're constantly appreciating. And if you're constantly in a state of gratitude, you're constantly in a state of prayer. And that state of prayer for me brings me love. And if you're suffering today, I encourage you simply just to let it go, because it's not true. Let it go and see how free you become. Thank you very much.